Hey, sorry degenerates. We're up all night barking outside my window, and now they're too tired to even get out of bed. So first hive, I'm getting set up to split. Just happen to see that queen there, so I know she's gonna be in the bottom. I put 8 frames of brood in the bottom box. I'm putting some empty comb here in the middle, and all the other brood frames I'm gonna take away from them in a split. I think this will put them into honey production, and then I won't have to do anything else to them to keep them from swarming. And I may have to make some big splits this time, which is okay. If I can get them to draw out a double medium, or if I can get them into a double medium, then I'll just stack honey supers on top of my splits. Might be able to make some honey with them. All right, so in this one I ended up with 8 frames of brood in the bottom. There's some eggs and young larvae mixed in, and there's actually some open comb because some of that has been emerging and she hasn't been back down there to lay. And then there's mostly open comb in the middle box. There's actually a frame or 2 of eggs that were just laid in the top box just because she's got so much in here. And then I've got 8 frames of mostly kept brood and 2 frames of food in here. So that will make 2 splits. I'm just gonna drop a queen excluder on top. I know the queen is in the bottom because I put her down there, so I don't have to shake all the bees off of this, which is really nice. Makes everything faster. I like having marked queens because it makes it so much easier to find them. They really stand out when they're marked. I'll just drop that on, set the lid back on, and then they're cooking. They're ready to pick up on Friday or Saturday. I just got a whole bunch more to do. It takes a while. I got to get faster. There's that hive I just showed you. This is just to show that not all of them look like that. This hive's tiny. They're heavy, but they're tiny. And I don't know that they're growing. And they're putting in drone brood, which is a precursor to swarming. So I'm gonna dive in and see how this queen's doing. So that hive is queen right, it's brood right, it's just small, it's not growing. I'm gonna write cull ? On the lid and the date. And if they don't progress in another couple of weeks, then we're gonna bust them up and make nukes out of them. So this time of year, I go through what I call my spring cull. If you guys watch my videos and you've seen me kill queens in the spring and combine them, and you know, these hives like this that are not progressing, they're not growing, they've probably got an inferior queen that's old and she's just running out of steam. Something is going on that they're not on track to make a honey crop for me. And if they're not making a honey crop, this is like a renter that's not paying rent. So how do I turn an unproductive asset into a productive one? You bust it up completely, make nukes out of it. There's drawn comb in there. I need a lot of drawn comb this time of year, so I'm pretty ruthless on these things. You know, if they don't progress, I'm going to do something else with them. I've got to have productive assets. So I opened this hive. Queen was laying in the top box. They're covering all the frames in the top box. Open this hive. Queen's up there in the top. They're covering all the frames in the top. Open this one, and they're not covering all the frames in the top. It doesn't look like the queen is laying in there. Get down into the box below that. They're not even covering all the frames in here. So there's a difference between these. I pulled 2 splits out of these 2. Pulled a full 10 frames. I'm going to take a full 10 frames out, and then when I come back and lift those off, I'll remove the excluder and just put a drawn honey super back on, and that should take them into the flow and they should be happy. This one I think I'm just going to take 1 split out of. So I'll get 5 frames and that's about it. So maybe 3 good best brood frames I can find. Unless I get down in the second or something and they've just packed with brood, I think I'll just take 1 split out of them. So my process on this, I pop the top, see if it's gonna be big enough to give me 2 splits. And what I've got over here is the last box of drawn comb that I put on. It's just sitting on a double screen board, and then this is the box I just took off. I took 3 brood frames out of here and stuck them, 2 brood frames and a food frame out of there, and stuck them in here, shook all the bees off. This is gonna be my nuke box. It will go above an excluder. So now I'll go through the second box and keep filling in until I get 6 more brood frames and another food frame. Get this box full, shake the bees off, and use my drawn comb out of that box to refill. So I will end up with 10 frames of basically empty comb in the bottom 3 boxes, and then 8 brood frames and 2 food frames in the top. When I come in and harvest these, I'm going to drop another super on of drawn comb, and hopefully that'll satisfy them. So I'm almost done getting my split set up in this yard. I've got these last 2 hives. I've got robbing going. Bees are snooping around, which is weird because they're on some kind of a little flow. I had to put a super on one of these because they were so heavy, and I've got white wax on the top bars here. So I know they're bringing in something. I don't know why they're trying to rob right now. Boy, they're pissy. These are really pissy right now. So I'm mostly done picking these cells off. I think I got 7 out of 45, or had 7 misses out of 45. Bottom bar was the last one that I did, and I had 0 misses. Top bar was the first one I did, and I had 5 misses. Second bar had 2. That tells me that top bar sat in my lap longer, and I probably should have had a wet rag to cover them with. I may have had some of those dry out some. That's something that I know, but I didn't do. Good looking cells. They all had a lot of royal jelly. Some of them still got a little bit in there. Most of them have eaten it. That's a good sign. Well formed. Show you my setup here. I've got this battery pack that I use at festivals and camping. That's got lithium batteries in it, made by Anchor. And I use it to power my Genesis Hovabator incubator in the truck. Works really well for that. I can also use it if we have a power outage or something, because this is kind of important. It's so important that I think I need to get a second one of these because my power cord actually went out last year and caused some problems. So I'd like to have a backup to this. And so I just picked my, I think, 38 cells. I've got almost all of this yard ready to go with splits. I've got to do these 2 hives today, and I'm about to go through this cell builder. I'll go through every frame. I'll take the top box off first and then shake all the bees off the frames in the bottom, cut down any emergency cells that they'll have. They'll be easy to find right now because they're capped. They'll be big, and make sure that they're queenless. And then I'm going to graft into them again. I'm not going to use the same build, the same queen mother that I did the last time, because I want to preserve genetic diversity. So I've got 38, hopefully 38 or 30 or $35 off of her. And I've got this colony here that is doing well and has 4 good mite checks in a row, and I pulled honey off of them next year, and I'm pulling a full box split off of them. So I'm pulling 10 frames out of them right now. That's a quality I'm looking for, and they're gentle. So I'm going to graft off of her this time, and then the next 2 or 3 times I graft, I'll probably pick queens in other yards. I've got some other ones that I really like, but nobody else in this yard that just absolutely stands out. This builder's still got quite a bit of capped brood in it, so I'm not going to add any this week, but In 10 days when I pull, or in 8 days when I pull this next round of grafts, I think I'll probably drop a couple of brood frames in, or 2 or 3 brood frames in at that time. I'd like to keep this builder going. It just makes it a lot simpler when I know that they're queenless and I know that I know what I've got. That's what I'm looking for right there. That'll mess a builder up real quick. It's hard to do one-handed. Getting these bottom boards ready to make splits with. I prefer to just use the equipment that the bees are going to end up in instead of using a different bottom board or top lid or anything like that. That's one of the reasons I really like all medium equipment. I'll show you my nuke box. So a 5-frame deep nuke is the industry standard, I would say. And 5 deep frames equates to 7.5 medium frames. My nuke box is a 10-frame medium with 8 frames and a 1-gallon double frame feeder. So the advantage of this is I've got one footprint. I only use 10-frame bottom boards. I only use 10-frame top lids. I only use one box and I only use one frame. And this nuke has got a frame feeder inside already. So I don't have to deal with jars and buckets and all that stuff. And the internal feeder has advantages and disadvantages, but for little colonies, one of the advantages is it does not promote robbing because it is internal. This just makes it easy for me. Screen bottom board with no coroplast closure. I can lock these bees up and not worry too much about them suffocating or overheating because they do have that screen bottom. Then I put the coroplast closure in and run that most of the year. But the day that I'm moving them is stressful and can get hot on them. So I like to leave those out until I get them moved. This works good for me. It's less equipment overall, less pieces of equipment if you run all mediums. Now, of course, I've got some deep hives now, but I'll run them as deep and a medium. And the nukes I take off of them, I'll just take the medium frames as nukes because I'm not going to invest into 5-frame deep nukes unless I absolutely have to. One more thing, I do staple in these entrance reducers. I've got a 6-inch by 3/8 opening. I leave those in year round. I don't see any issues with that. I'm in Tennessee and I'm running a screen bottom with a coroplast closure anyway, so they're getting some ventilation through here even in the heat of summer. And I don't see any reduction in honey production because of this. I like stapling these in because it's just permanent. You know, when you take the bottom box off, the reducer doesn't come up with the box and cause problems. And then these screens, I'm putting these in and stapling them because I'm going to be putting bees on here tomorrow and trying to make them stay in there. And it just makes it easier if everything's stapled in. I don't have to worry about shoving paper towels in the entrances and all that stuff day of. And they still stack if you cut them the right height. Convenient. Now, one last thing on this. I get a lot of questions about why I face the opening on my entrance reducers up. There are pros and cons to that. If you're running solid bottom boards and water gets in your hive, this can keep it in the hive. It can't get out. I'm running screens, so that's not a big concern for me. Water's going to go where it goes. It's got a way out. I also cut these about 1/4 inch short, so I've got an 1/8 inch gap on each side. Bees will propolize that up, but it will also allow some water to get out until they do that. Now, if you get ice, which in Tennessee we get ice pretty frequently, sleet and freezing rain and stuff, facing it up will allow the bees to get out sooner than if you face it down. I don't really care about that. I don't think that's a big deal. We get plenty of flight weather in the winter for cleansing flights. The main reason I do this is because it fits my oxalic acid vaporizer better. I've got a ProVape EZ, and I've got 2 other battery powered ones, a ProVape 1820 and an Instant Vape, and all of them fit better with the entrance reducer up. That's the simple reason that I do this. It's also telling that each little part of your equipment is a part of a system that can create more work or less work down the road. And I'd encourage people to get your system figured out and standardized, and then go with that. Back in my home yard, I've still got these 2 hives to finish up getting ready to split. And I popped into this one and really didn't expect this. This is an empty super I put on, and they have got it just about filled. They're on a little bit of a flow. I don't know what this is. Color looks great. That's fantastic. I don't know what that is. It may be sugar maple. I know they're getting started. That's just fantastic. So this honey super being full actually complicates my plan for this hive a little bit. I was relying on empty comb in here to put down to replace the brood frames that I take out of the bottom sections. They don't have any empty frames, they're not enough, so I'm gonna add a super to them of drawn comb and use the empty comb to replace the brood frames in here. And yeah, that's what we're gonna have to do. And so here's how my split is set up on a big hive that's on a flow. I've got a food frame and a food frame on the outside. I've got 8 brood frames that I took. Those are above an excluder. I shook most of the bees off all those frames. Confident the queen's not in there. The queen is down below. And I took a box of drawn combs, and I think I added 5 in here and 3 in here and 2 in here where I took the brood frames out of. So they've got 10 full medium frames that are empty in those boxes. So even if they're on the flow, that should slow them down, depopulate them some, keep them from swarming, and they're gonna make some honey because they've already got most of it super full. I'll say one more thing about this method. What I'm doing here is not ideal. Putting the brood up on the very top of the hive, 4 boxes. You really want that brood to be close to the brood nest so that you get nurse bees come up and populate it. But to do that, I would have to like come down here and put a queen excluder up here and then one here, put that split here and then lift 2 boxes off, and it's just a lot of hassle. So even if I get field bees in here, I'm making these splits strong enough. I don't think I'm gonna have a problem doing this. I did it this way last year, it works. I had good mating success. So I think it'd be better to have more nurse bees in there, but I've got capped brood, so I'll have a lot of nurse bees coming out in the next couple weeks. Here's my orange queen. That means that's a Corey Stevens virgin from last year. And she has made an absolutely monster hive with no signs of swarming yet. Happy about that. So we'll move her down. I'm going to take this brood frame, and that'll be the last of this split. I'm having to give them a super as well, so they're going to end up in 5 boxes, and I'm gonna take 10 frames away from them tomorrow, and they'll have 10 drawn combs added in. So I just counted in this yard. I've got 21 splits ready to go tomorrow. So now I've got to go to my next yard that needs to be split, and maybe a third one. I need 38 total. Got 38 cells. Gotta find them one way or the other. So pretty typical splits in the industry. Of course, deep equipment for brood is industry standard. So a typical split would be 2 frames of brood, 1 frame of food. So a honey frame and 2 capped brood frames, and all the adhering bees is a pretty standard split. I use predominantly medium equipment, so that would equate to 3 brood frames and 1 1/3 food frame or something. Basically 4 frames. Yeah, basically 4. This first round of splits, I'm actually doing 5 frames. So I'm doing 4 brood frames and 1 food frame. And that's gonna make those a little bit stronger, because if I give them, this round, if I give them drawn comb, there's a pretty decent chance that those nukes will grow up into 2 mediums in time that I can make honey with them. So if I give them, 18 drawn combs, and then get them into 2 mediums, stick an excluder over top and give them a super, there's a good chance I can make honey with them. It may not be much in May, but if we hit a sumac flow in June, they would almost definitely produce honey then. So I'm making this first round a little bit stronger. That also gives me a little bit of wiggle room on temperatures. If we get a cold snap or something, they're a little bit stronger and better able to survive that. Now, from here on, I don't think there's a very good chance that I'll be able to make honey with the nukes that I make this year, unless I make them really big, and I don't have the bees to make really big splits. So I'll probably step back to like 2 medium brood frames and a food frame and do a 3 frame split. And that means I can get 3 complete splits out of a 10 frame box instead of 2 splits out of a 10 frame box. So past this point, I'll be looking for numbers of healthy nukes. This first round, I'm looking for nukes that are big enough that I might be able to do something with them this year. I'll either split them again or I'll make a honey crop with them, one or the other.